Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we've got a new video for you and a new shooting format and series we're going to be starting here. As you can see here, hello, welcome back to NoBS. I'm Brooks, your non-stoppable, never-ending current host and ace YouTube video maker, and I'm here to talk about Cyberpunk 2077 again. Cyberpunk has still been running through the news cycle. There's been a lot of people talking about it. It kind of died down though. It's been out for about a month now, and the initial stories have started to settle, but I did want to talk about some people's reactions to this game because it's still very relevant and out there. A lot of people are still playing. I know I just am wrapping up a playthrough myself. I had a lot of fun with the game, actually, surprisingly, since there was a lot of bad drama around the game, a lot of things about it getting released and not working well on consoles like Xbox and PlayStation. It didn't run well on those systems, but if you had a PC like I do, you can play the game pretty well. Now, regardless of what version you have, unless you have a really beast of a computer, you're going to have to run it on lowered settings. I played it on low and medium settings, and I had a few issues, but overall the game wasn't too buggy. You could play through it really well. It was fun. You could get through the missions. There was just a few graphical errors for me, but that's not really what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about more of a political angle about this game and about gaming in recent history. I found a video by a YouTuber named Futura Sound Productions, and he seems to be calling Cyberpunk like this big political thing, which I don't really see it. I don't really get it. I know they threw in a few things, like they tried to be woke early on and added all these options for you to be able to have like different genders and stuff like that. But as far as taking a side in politics, that really didn't seem like the case, especially if you played through the game and the missions like I did. It was basically not there, but this video is going to say otherwise. We're going to talk about it more soon. We're going to get into the details and go through the video beat by beat, but first, let's take a quick moment to check out our sponsor. The only VPN I trust and use comes from Virtual Shield. So keeping an account with Virtual Shield ensures I can hide my location online, preventing advertisers from building profiles on me and allowing me to surf the web anonymously and securely. Virtual Shield was built from the ground up with the average internet user in mind. It's fast, reliable, secure, and it's also available on your iPhone, Android, PC, Mac, or tablet device. So try Virtual Shield yourself today. And if you click the link below this video, you'll get a free 30-day trial, which will let you experience true online protection with no risk or charges. Great, now that that's out of the way, let's get to this video in question. It's called Cyberpunk 2077, Worse Than The Last of Us Part 2. Now that's where this gets really controversial. You can see it's got a pretty mixed rating here. It's got a 1,000 likes and 1,000 dislikes, so it's an even rating. A lot of people weren't a fan of this video, and you're going to see why real soon. It's basically because they start to say it's right-leaning, and he goes into this whole thing like where it's right versus left, which I don't really see in the game. I played through the game and I didn't really see that, but let's go ahead and give them a chance and listen to the video first.
I don't believe every game should have to cater to a progressive outlook. And a game can still be good, even great for me, even with political subtext that I don't necessarily agree with or even like. But what I'm trying to suggest in this video is that the edgy, right-wing seeming stuff in Cyberpunk 2077, or more accurately in its marketing material, never constitutes a philosophy in the finished product.
Okay, this is where we start to take umbrage. They're saying there's this right-leaning motto or message there. I don't really see that myself. I don't really know where he's going with that. I think I have some predictions. I actually thought about this a lot. Since I saw this video like a week ago, I've had some ideas, and I played the game a little bit more since then. And the only things I see is that it's right-leaning is just that it's not super woke. Like, it's not woke enough. Like, it's not pandering to leftists enough, so they just kind of automatically call it right-leaning. The other things I noticed, because they're going to compare this to The Last of Us, and The Last of Us Part 2 was obviously woke, and that's why video game makers or video game reviewers like this appreciate that more. They love the woke stuff and the pandering and having the LGBTQ relationships and stuff. And I think with Cyberpunk, they try to signal that a little bit. Like, they did have all those gender options for your character, but it really wasn't that big of a part of the game. It wasn't political enough. And that's what's making them kind of lash out and say it was right wing. And the only other thing I'll mention before moving on is it has a big difference between the female characters in the games. Like, both games have prominent female characters. I noticed that for Cyberpunk. And I even kind of thought about that being like a little bit of a woke thing, because a lot of your side characters that you end up working with in the game are girls. But the big difference is there's a lot of girls in The Last of Us and these woke games, but they're never quite looking like what they look like in Cyberpunk. Essentially, they make the chicks hot in Cyberpunk. They're very attractive. They have nice long haircuts. They show off parts of their body. They're like, attractive, sexy. They wear clothes that are sometimes a bit revealing, but not like too bad or anything like that. Just normal hot girl stuff. And that's what I noticed with Cyberpunk, because there's a lot of chicks in there and they're all really hot, like model hot, like they look like really good. And that's the big difference between Last of Us. Last of Us had a lot of lesbian looking chicks that were like butch and manly and stuff like that. Nothing wrong with those people either, but they've definitely tried to make chicks less attractive when you're getting woke. So the fact that Cyberpunk has a lot of attractive chicks is probably why they say it's right leaning. That's kind of like how it is in politics anyway. Like if you're right leaning chick, you're probably hot. If you're a left leaning chick, you're probably not.
When you combine the deceptive hype, the reactionary dog whistles, and the generally poor and underwhelming final product, it really just seems to me like CD Projekt Red's management leaned into the culture war stuff not to make some kind of edgy and provocative statement, but more cynically to just ensure that even with all of its problems and lies, that Cyberpunk 2077, no matter what, at the end of the day, would still be a hit.
Okay, gotta slow that down, because he threw in dog whistles. He's saying it's like reactionary dog whistles. That's like common terms for these radical far leftist people. They call the conservative people reactionaries a lot, like they're reactionary. I don't know why that's like a big insult for them. And then on top of that, the dog whistle stuff is just baloney. I mean, it's just basically telling people that you have secret meanings underneath what you're saying, and they're like mind reading you. They're like, oh, you're not meaning what the words you say are. I can't quote you and say anything bad, so I have to pretend your quotes mean something else. You have to pretend there's some kind of sinister thing hidden underneath these quotes. That's what they do when they call stuff dog whistle, and it's very dishonest liberal tactic.
A game that for good old school gamers could do no wrong. That isn't using the medium to express something that I merely just don't agree with. That's using the specter of politics to exploit the player base in the name of looking out for them. Hell, that's exploiting the very right-leaning players who may love the game. They should be angrier in a way than anyone.
This is it. This is more the nonsense I was talking about. Those right-leaning players love this game. I don't know where he got this whole left versus right thing in the gaming, and also in this game. And then he's going to bring up Last of Us, which is like the title of the video. It's going to compare it to Last of Us, which I don't see the comparisons that much. I mean, he makes some points, but the differences far outweigh the comparisons. And I don't know. It's just like the liberals, the left is going with Last of Us, the right's going with Cyberpunk for some reason. But I'm not seeing that at all. Like I was saying when in the intro, like the game doesn't have overt politics. It only has secret ones that the guy pretends are there. And then on top of that, I think people were outraged at the game for different reasons. The graphics were bad. There were glitches. The release was botched. They had to do returns and stuff like that. It had nothing to do with left versus right.
Cyberpunk 2077 is still, in several respects, a solid game. Moments of real potential do shine through. The visuals, environments, and guns are particularly good, but it's nothing compared to the hype, and paying lip service to conservative gamers shouldn't be enough for CD Projekt Red to dodge as much contempt as Naughty Dog received.
So here's where he mounts the defense of The Last of Us. We've talked about this game extensively throughout last year too. Essentially, it had some very woke creators. They took the series in a far different direction. They took out the main male character, of course, because they want to push in these LGBTQ characters, and the whole producer and stuff attacked the fans and stuff too. And that's the big difference for me. I don't know if this is not mentioned here purposely, but that's why Cyberpunk didn't get that. They weren't attacking the fans. They weren't getting overtly woke or anything. I mean, there were a few kind of head turner moments, like the whole character selection screen and all these gender options. Some people were worried it was going to get woke, but then when it didn't is why I think people got triggered. And in addition, it really seems like this video is setting it up saying, hey, if The Last of Us got all this backlash, Cyberpunk should have got it too. Why didn't Cyberpunk get this backlash? Well, the reasons are pretty obvious. I've pretty much already explained them. The Last of Us kind of took this turn in a series that was beloved, they changed it into this woke thing and then attacked their fans. Cyberpunk didn't do that. Cyberpunk was a brand new game based off a board game, and they kind of started doing their own thing. At the end of the day, it does seem like it's a similar kind of like Fallout kind of game. It's like Fallout meets Grand Theft Auto meets like Far Cry or something like that. That's how the Cyberpunk game turned out as far as style, but that's a whole different style than Last of Us 2. That's something I want to talk about when this goes further.
Perfect world, they would receive more. Triggering the libs and non-right-wingers shouldn't count as a consolation prize for such an underwhelming and underbaked game. Now, were there quests and characters that I enjoyed? Were, in my playthrough, there 2 actually compelling sex scenes? Absolutely. But sex aside, which again is surprisingly scant for a game that so heavily markets itself around it, these quality moments were fewer and further between than in The Witcher 3 for me. And
so that's where the game gets compared to. The last big game this company made was Witcher. It's a whole different game though. Like they're kind of both RPGs, but Witcher has this third person thing with a lot of magic and spells and more stories. Cyberpunk is, like I was saying before, it's more like mainstream action RPG. You tweak your character a little bit and further down the line more, but it's really not fully like a classic one. It's kind of like when Fallout turned into Fallout 4 and did more action style shooter stuff. Cyberpunk has a lot of that too. But the point here is he's getting it, saying it has right-wing lip service and it's going after like right-wingers, like they're courting them or something. And I'll give him some credit, like that could be seen that way. I could see how that's true, possibly, but you got to consider what's going on here in full context. The reason it seems like they're trying to trigger the libs with this game is it's a very kind of rated R, dirty, gritty game. It's commentating on things in the real world. It's got that kind of angle. So naturally, it's going to trigger people like left wingers or other Puritans, other PC police people that are trying to make everything so sanitized and safe and playing it cool. That's obviously going to go towards them and maybe try to think it's triggering them. And in turn, it's also going to be supported by like a lot of right-leaning people because they're not for that kind of censorship, that kind of PC stuff, politically correct. They're more about having fun and saying and doing whatever you want, even if it is possibly offensive. That's kind of the interesting part about games like this. That's why it also compares to like a Grand Theft Auto. Not only are you stealing cars and killing people and robbing and doing stuff like that, but in addition, they have that commentary on society, and it's also in a rated R offensive setting that nowadays is just taboo.
most of the time, I didn't fight the system at all. I helped it.
V, got a client who needs help with some internal corpo skullduggery. Our boy wants dirt on his arch nemesis.
I helped prop it up as a freelancer. I sold my soul to make a name for myself in this city that doesn't want me. Whoever heard, by the way, of a punk helping the police?
There's the catch right there. There's another big reason they're saying this is pro right wing is because there's missions where you help the cops. And that's just a natural thing in video games like this. And this is also something left wingers have attacked other games for. Recent example would be Spider-Man. We did a video about Spider-Man. I believe it was 2018, late 2018. That game came out. We did a video because a lot of them were triggered because you help cops in missions. And it's totally ridiculous because, I mean, that game even more so, you're just obvious superhero trying to fight crime and arrest criminals. Cyberpunk, you could be that. You could also be a villain character. There's more nuance and options there. But essentially, there's a number of side missions where you help the cops stop criminals. That's what's triggering this guy and other left wingers like it did before. Along with all this other stuff, it's just showing the fact that, yes, these games seem like they're pro-conservative because you're helping a cop. But in addition, you are also seeing commentary that's anti-corporations. This is a dystopian kind of game set in the future where corporations have taken over, and that's what the main premise is stopping or fighting against these corporate overlords. And that's really not a right-wing thing typically, but you got to think about it now. Nowadays, the left, they first acted like they hated the rich. They want to eat the rich. They want to take down tech billionaires. But now at the same time, the tech companies are siding with them and helping them censor and take down their opposition. So that's why the left is pro-corporate now. And that's why they might also be offended or not like Cyberpunk. The last thing I'll say before I wrap this up is, first of all, we're going to do some more Cyberpunk videos on the second channel, which I think I'm going to rebrand NoBS Gaming. So subscribe to NoBS second channel, link below, or look on the channel page. We'll talk more about Cyberpunk. But lastly, I want to quickly talk about the comparison between these two games. We didn't really get too far into the video. If you want to check out the full video, you could find that below too. But essentially, he compares The Last of Us to Cyberpunk and talks about how Last of Us is much more polished and Cyberpunk has a lot of issues. And that's true. I can understand that. But you got to remember the differences here. I mean, Cyberpunk is a big open world game with missions that can lead you anywhere in this big city. That's harder to make. In addition, they tried to make the game for like 5 different platforms, whereas with The Last of Us 2, it's a very linear, level-based game. You have a strict path that you have to go on, which is simpler and easier to make. In addition, they only had to make it for the PlayStation. It's a PlayStation exclusive, so that gave them more focus, and it really just explains a lot of what's going on, and it explains the differences here, and also the differences in theme, tone, and the way the games turned out. Like, typically, open world games have a lot more to process, and nowadays they just like to release them early. Was it released a little too early? Certainly, especially for consoles. But that's why Cyberpunk has offered everyone full refunds. I'm not trying to go full defense mode for them, but they're giving the refunds. They're giving people money back if they want it. And if not, you could try and play it like I did. And I actually quite enjoyed it, which is pretty ironic because of this video and the guys saying it's a thing that only right-wingers enjoy. But I think everyone can enjoy it. I don't see all this political stuff. I see it being forced upon it and them trying to just attack it because it's not PC enough. So with that said, that about wraps things up. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. Subscribe if you're new, and until next time, have a great day.